But now I've just watched your career grow, where now you're a well-known Michigan radio journalist, NPR affiliate.
Okay.
And yeah,
Sure.
you'll take that. I like that. But I enjoy your work very much, and it usually has, you're usually digging around. You're not just reporting and reacting to events. You're able to do some investigative. I don't mean like in a crime sense, but more social justice issues or just problems eating away at the community. Is that fair? How would you describe your work if you're like, so what kind of stories do you cover, Dustin?
I mean, I try to see the social justice stories. I am and have been a locally focused journalist. I try to cover this community. I mean, I've done lots of stories about the economy. I've done lots of stories about, businesses and things like that. But I live in Grand Rapids, and it's my job to cover Grand Rapids, and so and that means try to cover all of it.
Right.
And those issues, social justice issues, are really pressing, really important issues in this community, certainly right now, and have been for a while. So it's like you can't be a local reporter and not look at things like that and not examine things like that.
Well, especially now, and I just think we just dive into the kind of the elephant in the city right now, with in the country, not just us, but your perspective locally on you are embedded in a couple of peaceful protests. Has also one that was the famous one a a week and a half ago. It seems like a lifetime ago already.
Yeah.
That turned rather, I wouldn't say violent, but there was some vandalism and destruction. There, unfortunately, nobody was hurt, but you were reporting and doing as much as you could to figure out what was happening. As you look back a week and a half or so after that, like, what kind of rear view mirror do you have just on that particular night and how it exploded?
That Saturday night? Well, I can only say what I saw that night. I got down there late. I was not there for the earlier part of the protest, which was peaceful. It was a huge gathering down on Monroe Center, and I was sort of at home just, monitoring social media and the Michigan radio, which is where I work. We cover the whole state, right? So we cover several cities. So not everything that happens in Grand Rapids is news for us. So it's often the case that something will happen in Grand Rapids that's kind of important to Grand Rapids, but people in Ann Arbor don't care. People in Detroit don't care. So we don't always jump at every single thing. Right. And there's only one of me in Grand Rapids now. Yeah. We used to have two reporters, but now it's just one. So I'm the only reporter for Michigan Radio who's living in Grand Rapids right now and covering Grand Rapids. The other thing is that for me personally, I just had heart surgery in February, and I had been out for that, and I was coming back, and my doctors were like, you're still high risk. We want you to try to take precautions. So I wasn't going into the field. All the interviews I've been doing the past several weeks have just been over the phone. So when this protest happened in Grand Rapids, I've talked to my editors about it, and I said, I'll monitor it, but I know some of the people who will be down there. If it's important, if it's statewide importance, I'll try to, I'll call them up and I'll try to make sure that we get those voices on. But I wasn't there physically, personally. And then, as you said, things took a turn in that demonstration right around sundown, and the police used tear gas or, chemical agents. They like to be very specific these days, but. And they tried to disperse the crowd, and...
Well, isn't pepper spray the vegan alternative to the chemical stuff? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I don't have all the ingredients list for all of those things. But there were agents used in the street, dispersal agents used in the street.
Sure.
And then you started to see some damage being done, some windows being smashed. And that's when I left my house and came downtown. And I live in Fulton Heights, so I'm like 2 miles away. So I just drove down and I walked, so I parked at GRCC, I walked down the hill and I arrived. The first thing I saw was the corner of Ottawa and Fountain, where the county building is, 82 Ionia, and people were just going at it. I mean, there was a fire in a dumpster, a massive fire inside a dumpster, and people were just smashing windows and trying to start a fire inside 82 Ionia. And it was just a lot of people, and there were no police anywhere. After a few minutes there, eventually a fire truck showed up and police showed up. Actually, I think it was sheriff's deputies who showed up. And they were there for a little bit. I moved on, and I was walking throughout downtown, and I just saw that windows had been smashed. It was actually surprisingly quiet and peaceful in a lot of places where I walked. But people had been smashing in windows, or they were going into stores. They were doing so some cases quietly. And still, I walked for 30 minutes and didn't see police. And I was walking around the section, if you're from Grand Rapids, you know the sort of core of downtown. Imagine north of Monroe Center, you're west of Division, east of Monroe, and south of Lyon. That whole area was just people were smashing windows, going into stores, just doing whatever, and there were no police around. They would show up temporarily to put out fires, and that was about it.
And I was between your stream and the Wood TV stream. The police seemed to be gathered mostly around the police department and the first block west of Division on Fulton. And they seem to be at least less tactically concerned with what was happening at the courthouse, if they were aware at all, because of the lack of presence. And then also just one block over on Pearl, when all the cars were, it took a long time for the fire department and stuff to get there.
Yeah.
I'm not, it's not an analysis, it was just my observation, but it was odd how Fulton was tied up with resources from police, and the outskirts, which are literally 100, 200, 300 yards away, were undisturbed, and people did a lot of things without worrying about being seen.
And the city manager talked about that afterward and discussed it. What they said was that they had seen what happened in Minneapolis when the 3rd Precinct got taken over and police had to abandon it. And the city felt that protesters were trying to do that here, trying to take over the police department. And as City Manager Mark Washington said, he said that we were not going to allow that to happen. So they put all their resources into protecting that building, and they didn't respond as quickly to other things. So that was the choice they made based on the resources they thought they had that night. We've seen in the days since that there were, when the National Guard came in, when they set up a perimeter, that was around the police department. When the National Guard left and the dump trucks were still there closing off streets, they were closing off streets around the police department. So they've walled off essentially the section of downtown where the police department headquarters is. And that's just the reality of what happened that night.
This Full Exposure podcast episode has been made possible through the support of Metro Health, University of Michigan Health, and Dr. Peter Hahn, who believe that creativity and the arts are essential to a rich, healthy, and fulfilling life.